good to
Okay.
meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Um, Man, you've had quite a transformation in your life. You've gone through some things.
Yeah. Yes, I
That's
have.
good. We have to do that, right?
Yeah.
Kind of the cornerstone to growth and evolution on this planet. Sometimes it's not pretty, but sometimes we get to places that are amazing. So let's find that amazing place as a weight loss transformation master here. And I want to begin our conversation with about 4 years ago. We were all trying to wrap our heads around how long was this pandemic going to last? What was it going to do? How did you make it through that pandemic time period, and how did it change you?
Well, I the pandemic for me was getting the skin removed.
Yeah.
So for me, I guess the pandemic kind of started for me. The day that the orders came down for, when kind of the lockdown happened, I was undergoing my very first surgery to try to get my body back to after losing 400 and probably 40 pounds without any assistance or any medical help or anything. I had gotten to the point where I had sold everything that I owned and all of my possessions. I had taken out loans to try to, because I didn't have insurance. My insurance wouldn't cover my skin removal surgeries, but medically needed them. I mean, they took 25 pounds of skin off me in the first procedure. So I'm in the pandemic, and the day the order comes down, I am going through. I actually had to go back in for emergency surgery, and I'm I needed a blood transfusion. I had all kinds of stuff going on, and as the orders are going through the hospital, everything's panicking. People are freaking out. That's how my pandemic started, and from then, I just for me, it was very lonely. And I just was going through surgeries, getting the skin removed. I was going in and um, having I'd recover, start walking, go through all of the recovery, get the surgical drains out, all that stuff. I go back in for another one. That was kind of how I spent my pandemic, was alone and bleeding.
Wow. So let's get to the heart and soul here of what you do these days. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day, and one of the kids says,
Okay.
"Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Wow, that's right now as far as living, that's a little bit of a struggle. I'm kind of in a transition phase, but I guess my what I'm trying to do with my life is to share what I've gone through so that other people can know what's possible and, have hope that no matter how dark their life gets or how many struggles they go through, that they can come back from it. And the other thing is that I'm just trying to be the support for other people, kind of the beacon of hope, I guess, that I didn't have when I went through it. And that's kind of my goal, I guess.
So how are you sharing that story? What vehicles are you using these days to do that?
So right now, I've after a lot of encouragement, I wrote a book, and I've got my book out there. That's a way for people to understand what I've gone through. And can I share the title of that
Please
or
do.
not? Or
Yeah. Yeah,
okay,
please promote it.
A Misfortunate Misfit by me, Karl Sebastian. And then the other main thing right now that I'm doing to try to kind of get the story out and kind of interact with people is that you can find me on TikTok, where I'm sharing cooking recipes and kind of my process of how I, kind of conquered myself, I guess, sharing my story, giving people help, support, things like that. You can find me there at Quarter Ton Carl.
So let's get to the essence of your story. Take me back to where you're born and raised and how you got to the point where you had the weight and then you lost it. How did all of that kind of steamroll into the success story we see today?
Well, when I was young, I wasn't wanted. I was not a wanted child. I was not planned and I wasn't wanted. So I never had any siblings. I had a family that was very kind of all of the ists. So I had a lot of my extended family were, narcissistic, um, racist, sexist, all of those things. And I never fit in with that. I never that was never how I felt as a person. And so none of those people really ever wanted to mesh with me. So I was alone. And it was a very lonely upbringing. And when I was fairly young, when I was 13, I lost both of my grandparents on one side and a great grandparent, all within about 3 months of each other from cancer. And, between all of that, it led me further and further down this addiction path. And my addiction was food because, as a child, what's accessible to you? Well, food, usually. I mean, it's going to be usually more accessible, at least in this country, than, a lot of drugs are at, say, 8 or 7 years old or wherever. So that was my drug. It became my thing to kind of find comfort in. And later it was alcohol. And for a long period of time, I mean, it was manageable, but even at a very young age. I mean, for instance, man, I'm 44 years old now. I'm 6'6". Um, but I weigh less now than I did at 11. So, um, it was a lifelong struggle. But by the time I was in my mid 20s, probably it was very becoming a significant problem. And by the time I was in my mid 30s, I was 750 pounds. So I'm staring down 40 years old. I'm struggling with alcohol. I'm, 750 pounds. I can't really move very good. And honestly, I'm welcoming death at that point, you know? And as far as what turned it around, that's something I'm kind of still, I struggle to find a good answer for because on the surface of things, there was no real reason for me to change outside of a desire that I wanted to live. I wanted to have a chance at life. I wanted to have, love, friends, nothing that I had had. I mean, I went through a period where I spent 5 years of my life without human contact.
Wow.
And I just decided that I had never really tried to do things my way. So why not try? What have I got to lose? I'm dead either way. It was kind of how I looked at it.
Yeah.
So I tried. I tried to start to make changes, and I didn't have insurance at that point, so I had no medical help. I had no friends. I had nobody in my life that gave me emotional support. I had no, medication, no anything. It was just me, and that's it. So I started to make changes. Had the patience because I didn't know what else I could do really. So I just stuck with it, and I had stuck with it long enough that it started to make some difference. And this was the first time in my life that I had lost. So that was like the light switch for me. The idea that for the first time in my life that I could do this. I could make those changes. I could win this battle. And that turned me into like a pit bull. Like I just was not gonna relent after that. And I learned how to cook. I always kept my what I liked because I feel like if you're not doing what you enjoy, you're not going to stick with it when it comes to eating and weight loss. Uh, I just kept learning and I kept adapting and I kept trying to be healthier and take things that I liked that were unhealthy and turn them into things that were healthy. And that's been a complete process for me. And it's always been balance. It's always been nothing really all that flashy. I know people always like to have well, what's the secret? Well, the secret is engagement, is really what I feel. You engage with yourself, you engage with your life, your food. That's the key. And that's what I was able to do this time. And step by step, literally, as I learned, to kind of walk again, I went from walking 10 feet probably to doing 7 to 9 miles a day, and piece by piece, I took the weight off. And over a course of about 28 months, I lost roughly 420 to 440 pounds. And then began the process of trying to find medical help, selling all my possessions, going through all of that to afford, or well, I'm still in debt, but get the means to be able to pay for $125,000 in 8 surgeries to get all of the excess skin removed and try to get my body back and lose another 100 pounds in the process. And now I'm just trying to share the word and see where life takes me.
So talk to me, I think the thing about what you're talking about, which is one of the fallacies of weight loss is that people think there's some magic thing, there's a magic pill, there's this, but it really is about being regimented. It's a holistic approach. It's eating, it's exercise, it's mentality, it's getting rid of everything that led you up to that moment, correct?
Yes. I mean, I think all of that is true, and I think a lot of it is to some degree. There's probably a better way, a nicer way to put it, but selfishness. It needs to be about you. I think too many times people look at. I mean, let's be real. Every diet I think almost anyone goes on is something somebody else put forth.
Hmm.
Whether it works for them or whether it's a clinical means. From people that are professionals. But the reality is your own situation is going to be different. Like what do you like? I mean, if you hate cauliflower, you're not going to eat cauliflower. So if people are
Yeah,
telling you eat cauliflower, it's not going to work.
yeah.
So it's really, I think what it's about is about connecting with yourself and realizing, okay, this is what motivates me. This is what I want to do. And I do think that most people fail because yeah, they don't do that. They want an easy button. They want to do it in a way that's just like gets them results, but they don't actually have to engage with what they're doing. And that's, I think, a reason most things fail. I don't think most of the things that people tend to knock, whether it's a medical treatment or a surgery or whatever it is, I don't think that they're inherently bad. It's just that people don't typically engage because they're doing them for the wrong reasons.
So what was the moment for you after you went through this transformation where you finally felt like you arrived at a point where I did it and you just felt relieved? I mean, it's a constant process, but was there a moment of relief where you were like, wow, I can't believe I did this?
Um, Not really is I think the way I would put it. There's been times throughout where I think when I finished my last surgery last February and I just kind of, could take stock and realize I've gone through this. I've done this. Like I've gotten my body back. I've got a chance again. But the reality for me is all of this has been driven by the idea of two things. One is to reemerge into society kind of a thing and have some social interaction, and the other thing is to kind of get some stability in my life, especially financially, and I haven't gotten those things yet. So that's still part of what I'm working towards. So there's still a level of um the job's not done.
So who's been a hero for you? Who's been an ultimate inspiration or hero for this transformation?
mm, Myself. As I mean, I don't mean that in any self-centered way, but I just I've never been a person that looks at what someone else does and thinks, well, I can do that, or that drives me. It's like it's always been I grew up very one of my big issues, one of the reasons that I became so heavy and something I've struggled with all of my life is self-confidence, is self-worth. It's always something that I don't have. So because of that, it's always been something, a point for me when I see someone else that's like, oh, that's amazing, and like I'm happy for them, but I don't think I'm good enough to do those things. It's always something that I've struggled with. So for me to kind of accomplish what I have, it's just kind of been I have to prove it to myself. So it's kind of made me not really by choice, but it's kind of made me my own inspiration, I guess.
Well, I grew up around parents that had weight issues for a long time, and um, I saw it firsthand and how hard it is. And there's just always weaknesses. There's always something. But what I notice more than anything else is that, and you probably know this very well, one of the biggest banes of anybody that's trying to get something is the excuses. Like when you get to the point where you just don't use an excuse as an alibi anymore, that's when things change.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100% agree with that. I mean, I think the excuses, I mean, the reality is none of us want to be the bad guy in our own story. I think that's a reality of life for most of us. So we create reasons why things are what they are instead of focusing on just accepting that this is how they are. So how can we get past them? I feel like that was one of the biggest things in my life that changed my life was just kind of breaking down all of those walls And I think in some ways I did that, when I had that period of time where I was completely alone, it in some way helped me do that. So I do. I think that a lot of us, even though we don't even realize we're doing it, but we make up an excuse. Oh, well, I was stressed out this week. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna eat this thing, or I'm gonna go out and and there's not anything necessarily inherently wrong with that, but most of us do it too, or those of us that struggle with being healthy do that usually too much, and it becomes a crutch. It becomes an excuse, and I don't, I did it myself for decades. I mean, you find any reason you can to not blame yourself because that just makes you feel worse. And then if food's your comfort thing, then you eat more.
Yeah. So if you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now and spend a little time with them, someone inspirational or fascinating, who would that be?
Oh boy, that is a that is a question. I would like to meet somebody like maybe somebody like a Kim Petras, maybe because they had the courage to do something that um is just totally there's a lot of people that are controversial about it. It's a lot of it's a difficult subject matter, and but yet she had the courage to like push this idea that she knew who she was. And it's not whether I agree, disagree. It's not, I don't, it's not about any of that. It's about that I would be fascinated to have a conversation with somebody that knew at that age that they weren't, who they were essentially, and go through those changes and live that life. And I guess I'm always encouraged by people that make big changes, whether there's someone that has climb the top of a mountain and then decides they're going to do something else, or I just find I have struggled with knowing who I am, I guess, at times. So I always find it fascinating with people that do seem to know who they are, and I'd like to spend time with people like that to understand that their process.
So what is the motivation for you every day to continue to transform and to get to a better place, get up every day? What is that motivation, that drive for you?
Yeah, the well, the possibility of life. Like all of the things that are out there, the things that I want to experience. I'd like to travel. I'd like to see the world. I'd like to meet a woman, and have a relationship, have love in my life. I'd like to, um, maybe get some friends, and I'd like to have a career, and I'd like to maybe share my story and motivate other people. So all of those things inspire me. I mean, they drive me and they motivate me to keep going because I know if I don't keep going, that those things aren't going to happen.
Yeah. So of all of the things that you've done in your life, what are you the proudest of?
I think the thing that I'm proudest of is that I didn't quit. I mean, despite the overwhelming odds, and everybody, the doctors that I've talked to since and everything are just they're amazed at what I've done. But it's the thing to me that I really didn't have a reason to go on, but yet I didn't quit. And because I didn't quit, I'm sitting here right now, and I've come through all of this, and I can share an experience that's pretty unique. And I guess that's what drives me.
So everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, everybody around you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Ah, I think that I'm I'm I think the thing that I resonate myself the most with is just that I'm understanding and I'm kind, and that's for the first time in my life, like that's enough for me. Like I'm happy with there's a lot of things that I could point to or that are potentially negatives or things I'd like to change, but I mean I appreciate that I I care. And I guess that's a quality that is I've been noticing is not as prevalent as I guess I would have hoped
Yeah,
in
I,
others.
I totally get it. I totally get it. So if anyone wants to get the book, the forthcoming book, they want to reach out, learn more about you, anything about your story, where can they go?
The book is available on Amazon now. It is called A Misfortunate Misfit by me, Karl Sebastian. It's available in Kindle or paperback. If you'd like to get in touch with me, or see more of my story or my food, cooking instructions, stuff like that, you can check me out on TikTok at Fourth Ton Carl. Or wait, Quarter Ton Carl. I'm sorry.
Carl, this has been wonderful, man. I think it's stellar that you've decided to do this. I think there's a lot of people in this life that don't realize how hard it is to do the things that you want to do to get yourself to a better place. And I have no doubt growing up around it that it takes a lot of work and effort. So good for you. Good luck on everything that you want to get out of your life. I'm so certain it's going to come. Karma is definitely one of the very few things that I realize in this reality that's true, and it happens. So it's coming. So thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
time, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me and having me on. It's been a nice conversation. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Thank